Hello. So I wanted to do something a little bit more kind of practical and focused based on this idea of like horizontal playing. So what do I mean by horizontal playing? Well, I think in a lot of jazz education you would be perhaps forgiven for forming the impression that you've got to kind of make every note in your solo melodies and even your comping chords, although we focus on solo melodies for the purpose of this lesson, but comping chords is also true. They have to make everything agree with the written chords of the lead sheet, okay? And this is absolutely not true, and it has never been true. And all you have to do to sort of validate that is actually go and check out the music, because people don't think that way. So, for instance, I'm going to take the example of Softly as in a Morning Sunrise, and I'm going to just basically sort of go through the basic chords which I learned when I started off, which is basically something like C minor 6, A minor 7 flat 5, D minor 7, sorry, D minor 7 flat 5, sorry, and G7 sort of kind of altered dominant on the G. And you see, when I first approached this tune, I was thinking along the lines that I've been shown at sort of, weekend jazz courses and in the Mark Levine Jazz Theory book and so on, where I thought mistakenly, but I got this impression, and I think a lot of people share this impression with me, that I had to play a scale that fit these chords and then scales that fit these chords. And from my understanding at that point, that meant 3 scales. So for the first 2 chords, you'd have to play something like, I don't know, depending on which version you play of the first chord, either the C melodic minor or the C Dorian. And then for this chord, you'd have to play maybe something like a C harmonic minor scale. Then for this, maybe the alto scale. And this has 2 effects. First of all, it's a lot of things to remember to do because the chords are moving 2 chords a bar. And the second thing is that it actually makes all of your melodic lines very kind of predictable and kind of tight, to a little 4-bar unit. And this is not really what we want for jazz improvisation. So what I suggest is we forget all of that. Just stop. We look at the A section as an extended C minor vamp. Because let's face it, this actually sounds rubbish. Nobody plays that, nobody comps that, nobody solos over those changes, right? So we're going to say, let's take a horizontal view of the first section, the A section, and view it as a C minor vamp. Nothing more complicated than that, okay? Right. So you're going to say, but jazz musicians don't just play C minor. They play all kinds of harmonic movement, all kinds of changes. And the answer is, yes, they do play changes, but they don't play the changes. Which is to say that they don't play every single chord as is written in the lead sheet. Rather, they generalize, they make it into a C minor vamp, and then they reintroduce complexity via the process of ornamentation. And how you ornament will differentiate you from being, for instance, a blues player, a bebop player, a modal player, or some kind of outside avant-garde player. It doesn't matter. It's the ornamentation that's important. And that might seem really obvious to me, but I don't in fact think that's obvious to everybody. Now, if I was very pedantically explain something which you already know, then please leave this video. This video is not for you. But I think there are lots of people who don't understand this, and I think it's really important to say, okay? So at no point am I going to be talking about 2-5-1s or turnarounds or anything. I'm just going to be talking about simple, blocked out harmonic regions and then how we can reintroduce complexity. So very simple. I'm just going to take the blues scale, which is familiar to pretty much all guitar players, the C blues scale, which is the version, with the added flat 5 in it, okay? And I'm going to play that over the A section of Softly as in the Morning Sunrise, okay? Okay, so this doesn't sound to me like the blues in this sort of sense, you know. That's very hard to do because of the thick strings. It doesn't sound like that kind of thing. It's not Chicago blues, but you could do that over this progression if you wanted to. And you can imagine somebody like Mike Stern or Robin Ford or Scott Henderson doing that on this chord progression and sounding great doing it as well. There's not always a massive divide between jazz and blues, and in fact players like Kenny Burrell and Grant Green often use blues phrases really effectively. On jazz guitar we tend to do less bending, obviously, and we tend to use more slurring. That's a classic cliche, for instance, from Grant Green. You know, maybe a little bit of bending, but not much, and lots of double stops and octaves. And if you're feeling a little bit more advanced, you can break up the pentatonic scale more intervallically, which is the way that Wayne Shorter and John Coltrane used it, for instance, as well as playing blues phrases on it. So it's a very versatile resource. Now we come to the B section, and what I think we should do for that is, again, play quite simple. We're going to use a C minor over the E flat major. It's a minor major parallel relative connection. E flat major and C minor have the same notes, so we can continue to do that. Then we get this little thing going into F minor. So we're going to ignore this chord for the minute, the E diminished seventh, and just think about the F minor where we're ending up. Okay, and then we have another pointing chord going back into C minor. So we're going to play E flat minor, C minor, sorry. Okay, and then go into F minor here, still F minor, and then I think go back into C minor here. Okay, and we're just going to keep it quite generalized and just think about the melody and continue to use the blues. One little trick I'm going to introduce is actually using the natural seventh in the blues, which is something I heard Lee Morgan do. And it might end a blues phrase like this. So there we go in B flat, and we go down to G, B, G, C. So and that just gives us a little bit more finality, a little bit more cadence, because we're actually using the natural seventh, which kind of gives it a sense of 5-1, like a perfect cadence into that C minor chord. Very emphatic, and it sounds great if you end phrases that way. And I might do that into the F as well. So in the case of the F, it would be this thing. So F minor. So that might be a nice way to finish off the B section. By the way, don't feel ashamed to compose things. That's another jazz myth, that you can't compose your solos. Okay. So we'll press that side. So it's very simple, but it's effective. Right. So now I'm just going to walk you through some of the types of ornaments that you could do. And I'm not going to go too much into detail with them. I'm just going to discuss them quickly. So one thing you can do is you can start using the harmonic minor, which is a very bebop thing to do. And harmonic minor has a flat sixth in, and our seventh again, which I've talked about a second ago. And these are tension notes, so they create a sense of movement. If I start playing, doing that kind of stuff, it feels like it's going into C minor. You're kind of being drawn in by the gravitational force of those notes as they inevitably want to go to the C minor triad tones, right? There's a real feeling of that kind of tonal gravity. So if I start a scale from a flat sixth, it has that really kind of strong feeling of tonal gravity going on there. And one way you can really ramp that up is by using the B diminished seventh arpeggio. Sorry. And sort of chromatic passing tones and all sorts, just to give it that kind of almost Baroque sort of feeling, almost like Bach or something. It comes from that tradition, but obviously with the rhythms we're using and with a bit of an infusion of the blues, it's going to sound more like jazz. Also, another thing that sounds very much like jazz is use the major sixth on the C minor chord, which is coming from Charlie Christian, really, although Barry Harris also teaches that, and he got it from, I think, Coleman Hawkins, probably Lester Young as well. Okay, so let's have a go at that. Okay, so notice how I did that trick into the F minor as well by using okay, and that puts us, that little thing that I just played there puts us into the next thing we can do, which is we can make the whole thing modal. So we're going to use the C Dorian mode, and one fantastic way to use the C Dorian mode is to break it up into thirds. So instead of just playing, you know, like that, we do what Wes Montgomery did and we break it up into thirds. That kind of a thing. So instead of just, you know, playing it as an extended arpeggio, thinking about C, you know, C minor 13th, and you can break that into little smaller. So you think about playing like B flat major 7th over the C minor, you know, or maybe the E flat major 7th, all of which are upper extensions of the C minor chord. It's going to sound a bit like this. Actually, I'll tell you what, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing each time. Start off modal. Sit still modal. Blues. Bebop. Modal. Bebop. Bebop. Modal. Okay. So there's a few other tricks there in there, such as, you know, breaking a scale up into fourths, which sounds, you know, very modern. You know, it's the kind of thing that you can hear Larry Young doing that, for instance. Sorry, not Larry Young, the other one, Larry Goldings. Yeah, you can hear him do that. I like that one a lot. Pete Bernstein too. Okay, so that's all hip, I think, and you can hear like a bit of Wes, a bit of Grant Green, a little bit of Pete Bernstein maybe, sort of creeping into the thing. This gives us a lot of resources we can play already, and we can go further with this. We can sit more on the altered dominant maybe and play things like the altered scale. We can sit on those for as long as we like. And remember that we're not thinking about 2-5-1s at any of that stuff. We're just using these sounds when we want, and we're creating our own sense of structure by balancing tension and release and different sounds, and that's really important. Okay. Another sound we could use is perhaps the half-hold diminished, so we might use the half-hold diminished sound, G7, and that nice sort of 13 flat 9 sound I think sounds absolutely awesome in the minor key. So I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to tell you what I'm doing while I'm doing it, hopefully. Blues. Altered. Okay, bebop. Okay, diminished. Bridge. Keep it simple. Bebop. Bebop. I have a modal. Well, altered. Quite hard to do, actually. Hopefully you get the idea of the different resources as I'm employing them. Okay. Last one I've got is exotic. So really exotic is any scale that I put on the 1 that's not just a straightforward minor, and this could be something like, for instance, the whole tone scale, which is something that Wes Montgomery actually does, in case you think it's terribly contemporary or anything. I could even use the C, what would that be? Probably the C half whole scale? No, C whole half scale. Maybe C whole, I don't know. One of those two. I'll see what grabs me. Or, you know, I could use something like the double harmonic minor, so that's the harmonic minor with a flat 9 in it, or flat 2, or any of these ideas. I'm just gonna use the whole tone scale anyway, because it sounds kind of really quite hip. C, it would be B whole tone. So again, it's like we're playing it off the 5 chord. So bebop line, obviously. Whole tone again. Bebop line. Okay, F minor. Bebop. Altered. Blues. Something a little bit more exotic. There. So yeah, I was going a little bit out there, but hopefully you can appreciate how much freedom that horizontal approach really gives you. And we've gone from quite simple stuff to quite complex stuff. So anyway, feel free to leave any comments you might have below. Thanks for watching, and I hope you find that some help.